Good evening. We're going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. Dr. Thomason, roll call.
President Reese, members of the board, please let the record show that all 5 board members are present tonight.
Thank you. We're going to go ahead and have our moment of silence followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. And we just ask if you can keep the family of our student who passed away this last week in your thoughts and prayers. All right. I move that we approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
Any questions or comments regarding the agenda? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
That motion carries 5-0. And Dr. Thomason, the superintendent's report.
President Reese, members of the board, at this time I'd like to welcome up Michelle Reese to acknowledge some very special people within our district with awards and recognitions tonight. Michelle.
Thank you, Dr. Thomason. Thank you, Madam President, members of the board, and members of our audience. Tonight, I'd like to first bring up Mr. Sean Varner from Cooley Middle School for a point of pride from our Cougars.
Good evening, President Reese, members of the board, cabinet. It is my pleasure to bring up the Cooley Middle School Points of Pride Volunteer of the Year, Miss Kitty Smith. Miss Kitty Smith, come on up. Kitty, of course, is dressed in Cooley purple. So, Kitty Smith, what doesn't she do for Cooley Middle School? First of all, she is deeply committed to Cooley Middle School. Her husband is a longtime teacher at Cooley since it opened, and a longtime Higley teacher, Dick Smith, and she has tremendous pride in Cooley Middle School and wants what's best for the Cooley students. She does a lot of work in the Cooley Library, helping our librarian out. She helps with iPad rollouts, iPad collection. She helps with, of course, our next door neighbors, the Cooley preschool. She helps come in and she reads to the little tykes as they come in for reading time, which I know they enjoy just as much as Kitty enjoys. And of course, Kim Murphy, our librarian, deeply appreciates the help she gets in the library. Kitty is also, you can find her at every single athletic event we have at Cooley Middle School. She and her husband, Dick, run the concession stand. And not only are they at Kitty is at every single athletic event helping run that concession stand, she spends time on the weekends going and purchasing items for it, restocking it. Definitely shows a commitment to the school, and more importantly, I think, than anything, when she is at those events, she gets to know our kids, and as you can see now, she always has a smile on her face, and they absolutely love her. So, Kitty, thank you for all that you do for Cooley Middle School. We appreciate it. Kitty, I'm going to have you, as I present you your tulips and certificate, I'm also going to have you let, I think I already gave it away who's here for you, but I'm going to let you say who's here supporting you tonight.
Oh, my wonderful husband, Dick Smith.
It's his 44th year of teaching.
The man, the myth, the legend, Dick Smith. Thank you, Kitty.
Thank you, Mr. Varner. Now I'd like to welcome up our San Tan Elementary School Principal, Mr. Ray Mercado.
Thank you. President Reese, Governing Board, Dr. Thomason, Cabinet, and community. I'm the proud principal of Santan Elementary, and I just want to thank you for this opportunity to recognize some amazing leaders at Santan. We are a Leader in Me school, so everything we talk about is leadership, and really excited to celebrate these individuals with you. Our PTO just had a daddy-daughter dance and did a really cool theme of Western and did these wanted posters around campus, and I didn't put this down. I'm the mic bandit, so I have something I have to go by because they say I talk too much, which I don't agree with. But, so I have bullet points here. All right, let's see here. Very excited to present Shauna Stingle, 5th grade teacher. Shauna, if you can come up here, please. And this is all from teammates and colleagues. She's a team player, passionate about student success, makes learning fun and engaging, celebrates all learners. She is respected by her colleagues, students, and parents. She supports teachers by mentoring. Today she delivered a lesson in our PD, and she's a great listener. She is an asset to Santan. Congratulations. And I made these cute little things right here. Let's see here. Miss Susan George, our resource aide, classified. Come on down, Susan. Susan, she helps wherever she is needed and does a great job every single day. She is very compassionate with students and always has a smile. Her patience and kindness is given daily to all. Susan will do anything outside of her job to assist. She is dedicated and reliable. She loves her job, the kids she supports, and Santan. Congratulations, Susan. Our volunteer, Jennifer Zauer. I had to add this. She is a super amazing volunteer in Miss Totman's classroom. That's 1st grade, so that makes sense. She organizes the most wonderful activities and parties. All the students feel included and happy when she helps. The PTO extraordinaire. Amazing room mom. She is always willing to help. She makes teachers feel like they matter. Everything that Jen does when she comes to campus is supportive of our programming. She helps me with so many things with technology, and you are very appreciated on our campus on a daily basis, so congratulations. And for her kids here, this is for Mama, okay? So you can't. They already asked if I would share. And Gianna Jones, 6th grade student, come on down. Gianna is always willing and ready to volunteer to help anyone at any time. No task is too large for her to accomplish. She's an amazing leader and friend to all. Anytime I see Gianna on campus, she has a beautiful smile and a positive attitude. She is a leader on our Student Lighthouse team. She participates with many clubs, and I was supposed to ask you, what clubs do you participate with?
Band, choir, volleyball, and color guard. And Lighthouse.
And Lighthouse. So thank you for all you do to make Santan an even better school with you participating and giving input on how to make our school better. So we appreciate you.
Thank you.
Yes, while I'm passing this out, please share with everyone who is here celebrating with you.
Oh, my husband and my daughter and my teammates.
Also, my husband, my daughter, and all the school friends. I love them so much. And I love the admin too.
See, I have 3 of my 4 kids here. My oldest chose soccer over coming to this. So priorities when you're in 6th grade. But my husband's here as well, and then 3 of my 4 kiddos. And I've been lucky enough to have a daughter in Miss Stingle's class. And Miss George has been in the classrooms of my current 1st grader, and they're both amazing.
And I think for 3 years, I've been trying really hard to get her to come teach at Santan because she is an educator and she teaches at the higher level. And so it will work one time.
My mom, my stepdad, my sister, my 2 cousins, my grandma, and my aunt.
Thank you.
Thank you, Santan Scorpions. Now we get to celebrate the Bobcats with Mr. Bickle from Bridges Elementary School.
Thank you, Michelle Reese. President Reese, members of the board, cabinet, thank you for this opportunity to celebrate our Bobcats. I'm actually going to pass the mic to Todd Berg. He's going to kick it off first.
Welcome, everyone. Our Teacher of the Year this year is Lindsay Shelton. Please come on up. When I think of a knowledgeable professional teacher who goes above and beyond for her students and the school, Lindsay Shelton immediately comes to my mind. She is always collaborating with staff members or analyzing data to support and promote student learning. She is relentless in making sure that every student has their needs met. I love going into her classroom and watching her teach because she brings the curriculum to life and enriches the students' learning experiences. Lindsay led Bridges Book Club and Rubik's Cube this year. She definitely has a positive impact on the students she interacts with. I am looking forward to continuing to work with Lindsay as she continues to build leaders at Bridges and motivate students to reach their potential. Congratulations, Lindsay. Yeah. And Mary Jans, if she would come up, please. So Mary is our classified. She is our health aide. Without a doubt, the best health aide that I've had the pleasure to work with. Mary is the most patient, caring, loving person that I know. Whenever a student comes into the health office, Mary is there to greet them with a smile and offer whatever help or support is needed. Mary's attention to detail is impeccable. The health aid office might be filled with students, but Mary always remains calm and gives each and every student the attention they need. I appreciate all of your hard work and energy you put into making sure that the students are taken care of so that they can get back into the classrooms. Thank you for everything you do for the students and teachers at Bridges. Thank you.
And the 50th President of the United States, Carson Wengert, please come up to the front. All right, so I'm going to do something a little bit different. I called one of our teachers before tonight to get their take on Carson. So Mr. Seiferth, some of you Santan people know Mr. Seiferth. He he opened up with, "Oh, geez." And then he just rattled off for like 5 minutes what Carson's all about and how awesome he is and whatnot. So I'm just going to actually quote what Mr. Seiferth said. He said, "Continuous drive for learning, always questioning, always wanting more, always wanting to grow, motivation and drive, and he's humble on top of it. He knows that he's super gifted and talented, but he doesn't flaunt it, as he's always willing to help his peers, but does it in a way that demonstrates emotional intelligence and ensuring his peers feel successful." And the teacher went on. "Work ethic, intrinsic motivation to learn, insatiable hunger for knowledge, always goes above and beyond and never does the bare minimum." When asked what type of career they project Carson to have, the teacher's emphatic response was leadership. Teaching, mentoring, giving back to others. He has all the skills he needs to do whatever he wants to do. I then asked, "President of the United States?" And with an emphatic yes, "You could be the president, buddy. I promise you." So he ended with, "Basically, we wish we could clone Carson." And I agree. As a principal, I could not be prouder of a student on our campus. You're amazing, and you can do anything you set your mind to. So thank you for all that you do. All right, Carson Wengert. And our volunteer could not make it tonight, Danette Douglas. So that concludes ours. Yeah.
My mom's just here tonight.
My husband's out of town, but my mom is here too, and my 3 children who all go to Bridges with me.
I'm joined by my husband and my 3 kids who also go to Bridges, and my parents are still coming to my events. Isn't that wonderful? So thank you.
President Reese, members of the board, coming up for the remainder of the month of February, on Friday, February 15th, we do have a superintendent's visit to the world-renowned Higley Traditional Academy, one of the top elementary schools in the state of Arizona. And then on Monday, February 18th, we have President's Day, no school for the kids. And then on February 27th, we do have our next board meeting and work study at 6 p.m. here at the district office. Those are the upcoming events for the remainder of February.
Thank you. And I know everyone left, and I was just going to say, I didn't shake people's hands because I've been sick and I don't want to spread my germs. I'm keeping them to myself. All right. We will go on to our board comments.
President Reese.
Ms. Wilson?
We have been a busy board with this 1 month span, and now we get to comment. So I was at the orchestra concert, and they had over 90 students, I believe, perform for that, and that was amazing. I was a little late to our board meeting for that, but they did a great job. And then we were also, for a few of our board members, actually, were all at the Chinese New Year celebration, and that was amazing, put on by our elementary and middle and high school were all in attendance of that, and that was awesome. We also did the Bridges second grade presentations, and those were put on as an independent study, and some of the teachers did that, and that was excellent. We also had Leader in Me this month for Santan, and a lot of other very important events, including the reunification drill, and that was amazing as well. And last night, to round it all out, was the talented presentation where a few of our students were recognized for ACT and SAT scores. And even one of them, Dr. Schillingberg, you'll have to give me the exact number, scored over 1,500 as an 8th grader on the SAT. 1,540. And that was amazing, and I was also at that. So we've had a very, very busy month, and I know that all of you were at many of those events as well. So just wanted to share some of the important things that are happening around Higley.
Thank you. Yes, it has been a busy couple weeks already. Any other board comments? All right, Mrs. Wilson summed them all up. All right. Go on to request to speak to the governing board. Okay. We value input from our constituents. Time has been set aside for anyone from the audience who wishes to address the board. Please remember, this is not an appropriate venue to evaluate, discuss, or criticize district personnel. Policy KEB provides a process for complaints about personnel. Speakers should be aware that false statements about individuals may result in civil liability. Members of the board may not discuss items that are not specifically identified on the agenda. Therefore, pursuant to ARS 38-431.01H, action taken as a result of public comment will be limited to directing staff to study the matter, responding to any criticism, or scheduling the matter for further consideration and a decision at a later date. Please limit your remarks to 3 minutes. So we have Katie Washburn. Hold on, wait. It doesn't sound like the mic's on.
Most people don't have a problem hearing me, so I don't tend to get really close to mics. Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. What I'd like to talk tonight about is an athletic center for Williamsfield High School. The field house was on the original plans 12 plus years ago. When we go back into the dockets, it was supposed to be there, and due to reasoning at that point in time, it was cut. Our student athletes continue to grow exponentially every year. Without that facility there, we are running into some major problems over at Williamsfield. When we have toured other facilities of the East Valley, Williams Field has the worst athletic facilities in the East Valley. When people come weekly to tour Williams Field, we avoid the locker rooms, the weight rooms, the baseball field. We get them to the football field to show them what's there, and that's it. We don't show those to them because it's an embarrassment of what they are and the lack of facilities that they have. The students who are touring our schools, they're also looking at Perry, Campo Verde, Gilbert, and Highland. We are throwing money away if we don't invest in our students. It's about retention of the Williamsfield High School student athletes that we have. It's about getting those students to come into HUSD. If we lose those bodies to the Gilbert or Chandler districts, we're losing $4,000 to $4,500 per student athlete. With the building will solve the safety issues and the concerns that are with the current locker room due to lack of square footage in there. It will allow our indoor sports, our band, our dance, our drama clubs to free up that locker room area where an athletic facility out there will move baseball, soccer, softball, tennis, all of those sports can be moved out to the athletic center, so it frees up the locker room that's already there and some of those rooms that have been taken over by athletic training, so there's more room for dance, for drama, for our band to have more practice space, to have more room. It also lets our indoor sports like basketball and everything go there. The design that we have seen solves the current issues. For baseball and softball, it'll move bathrooms closer to those fields so our softball girls don't have to jump on golf carts in between innings and drive as fast as they can to try and get to the bathroom. The locker rooms, so that there's enough room for people, there's not a safety concern. A concession stand which boosts revenues for our school, and also needed storage facilities. For our track and tennis and soccer team, they'll have a locker room where they can come into where they aren't bombarded with all the other students, and there's going to be the much needed storage. As it stands right now, when you walk around Williamsfield, there's pieces of equipment between indoor athletics, outdoor athletics, band, drama, cheer, dance, all of those are all over the school. So I would recommend that you deeply take a look at making an athletic center happen at Williamsfield High School. Thank you.
Michelle Bugg.
I don't think I need a microphone either. Thank you so much for allowing us the opportunity to speak. I'm actually speaking also on behalf of an athletic center at Williamsfield and speaking to the fact that the athletic center or field house was on the original blueprints and plans when the school was originally built 12 plus years ago. And we can provide those plans to you guys for your review if you so see fit. I'm looking at the financial aspect of things. So I have submitted Freedom of Information Act to the district to look further into the 2013 bond monies, how those bond monies have been spent over the years and all the different buckets that are still available. I've learned a lot through this process with meeting with Dr. Thomason and Mr. Holland, and have certainly asked a lot of questions along the way. I can't say that I know everything in this process, but I know enough to ask. And honestly, as a taxpayer in this district, I felt it was my duty to ask. Having one child already graduating from Williamsfield, a current junior at Williamsfield, and a rising 8th grader that's graduating or leaving Cooley and heading over to Williamsfield, I think it's very important that we consider all of those student athletes and fine arts members of our school and make sure that we have the appropriate space for them. So one of the things I've done, and I've done some research with the Auditor General's office to see how and if the bond monies can be reallocated. I've learned that 10% of that original bond can be spent in other buckets if there is overage. So I know that we have an overage in the technology bucket, so some of that money went to technology to pay for the new laptops that are going to the high schools, and then some of the high schools' old laptops are filtering down to the middles because, you know, our iPads aren't so good anymore. So I know that that's a wise thing to do. We do have $11 million in the bucket for new school build. And so while I know that a new school costs well over $11 million, there may be some ways to think creatively or think out of the box and put a new school perhaps at Williams Field, whether it be the athletic academies that we've been so successful with football, baseball, wrestling, and basketball. So that I know that would require new licensures for those school campuses. So I've investigated that. I know that there's some monies left in the new school budget or the building existing facilities on school campuses, and so we'd like to expand our current weight room with that as well. And I also know that we own land that, based on the way the buildings are going and student bodies are leaving our area per se, we may never even use that land. We may never even build that school. And I think there's been interest in someone buying that land from us, but I know that there are certain restrictions and things that we need to go through. So really, we just wanted to come forth and ask for your consideration to look at this athletic center on Williams Field's campus. Thank you.
Thank you. Scott Hancock?
I am very grateful that you guys are giving us the audience to be able to talk to you today about a Williams Field field house or an athletic center, depending on how you're going to count it this time. But I've really been looking at it. I'm a homeschool parent who chose to stay. I could have gone anywhere. We were looking at Chandler, we were looking at Queen Creek, and we chose to stay here. My son has always wanted to be a Blackhawk, and we were here. And I was surprised at how successful we've been. Williamsville's been in their athletic department based on the facilities that they have. I walked in to pick my son up one time, and I was in the weight room, and I saw how tightly packed they were. Tight packed, which all that's going to be is someone's going to get hurt. And I'm concerned for the security and the liability of the Gilbert or the Williams or the Higley school system. With what I saw, the plans 12 years ago, we would have had plenty of room if we would have been able to build the building. We understand that we have to be able to spread our monies the best way we could, and then 12 years ago, it was the best way to spend the money. I think, though, today we've proven and shown that how good of a program we've run over there and how good of a program the district has supported us, and we are very grateful for the support. The locker room being so tight, kids being triple stacked, some of the sports not even being able to have a spot in there, having to go other places. And I think that's not fair to some of the other sports when the bigger sports dominate it, right? And they take over that area. And with the new facility, we'd be able to accommodate everybody. And then the practice fields, only having one truly lit field is limiting to us. We have kids that try to play till dusk, and it gets dark quick, and again, it's a liability issue that I see for the district and for the school itself, is not having a facility with lights on our field and without having which this athletic center would bring with all the upgrades. There's still a big liability that I'm seeing. I'm a concerned parent, and I wouldn't want my kid running out there on that field when it's dark and you know we're in farmland, right? Gophers are here. They make holes in the ground, and I'd really love to see some lights being put up out there too. You know, if we need an evening or a different timing, it has to be in the light. We have to go rent somewhere. You know, this is an opportunity for us to build, and actually an opportunity for us to rent to others, that we could actually bring some revenue back in if we had a lighted facility. Baseball, they don't get to play late. They get to play in the middle of the summer in the hot, or you know, when it's not primed to be able to play the sport. Our softball team is the same way. For someone to get hurt and they have to throw them on a golf cart and run them all the way back across campus to where the facilities are that they can be taken to is a bit unnerving to me. If you get hit in the face with a baseball, we want to get someone fixed quickly. We need to get them to the right spots. And I just feel that that's a lot of liability to the district and to everybody. And for your consideration, would love to see an athletic center and lights put at Williamsville High School. And thank you for your time.
Is there any other requests? All right. Thank you. Thank you for that information. All right, we're going to go on then.
President Reese, members of the board.
Dr. Thomason?
I would just like to respond that the board has already asked the cabinet and the district to look into the situation. We do have a lot of different things that are going on to help with this situation. I agree with the parents here tonight. We do need facilities on there. We need to have equal access at both high schools, and there is something that we are definitely working on. The meeting with Mrs. Bug was absolutely incredible, and a lot of things that she shared with us tonight were things that we're looking forward to doing at Williamsville High School. So that is something that is very heavily weighted on my mind since it first came to my attention back in October. And so I want to let the board know and the community know that we are still moving forward with those plans.
Thank you. All right, we're going to go on to our consent agenda. I move that we approve consent agenda items 6.2 through 6.7 as presented.
Second.
All right, any questions regarding any items on the consent agenda?
Madam President, just 2 comments.
Mr. Glover?
Thank you. Mr. Holland, only 62 pages of payroll and expenses. Is everything okay? I'm only kidding. It was a short 2 weeks. And then we have the out-of-state student and staff travel, and I read the names, and I know these are parents and teachers, and they're all just, again, spending nights away from home. And I thank Higley for providing opportunities to train these folks so that they can be better at their jobs, and I thank them for the sacrifices that they make to make Higley a better place. And I just always want to say thank you to those folks who give so freely of their time.
Not to mention Dr. Thomason is off to China, so that's a long flight.
President Reese, members of the board, I hope that this will be my last trip to China for the district. Although I do love the country and love to visit, it is not a leisure trip at all. And I'm looking for volunteers to go next year.
Thank you for continuing that relationship. So I just wanted to mention I did have some questions for Dr. Thomason when I met with him. And I just want to thank our Higley youth sports coaches. There was some question because we see some repeated names multiple times. And it's because they coach multiple teams. And so I just want to say thank you, because without them volunteering their time to take on more teams, while there's a stipend, there's a lot of volunteer time. And some of them are coaching 3 and 4 teams. So I want to say thank you. I appreciate that, because without them taking on additional teams, we have kids who wouldn't be able to participate. So with that said, if anyone knows any coaches who want to coach Higley Youth Sports, please contact Community Education, and we can always put them to good use.
President Reese, we will say that the commitment is for 8 hours a week, 4 hours on a Monday night, and 4 hours on a Thursday or Friday night, depending on which sport. So it is a minimum amount of time.
You heard it here first. All right, any other questions on consent? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 That motion carries 5-0. All right, we're going to go on to our action and information items. The monthly governing board finance report for January. As always, thank you, Mr. Holland. We appreciate this information. Does anyone have any questions regarding our financial report for January? And just a reminder, this is available on our website for our public to see. All right, then we're going to go on to 8.2, our safety and security update. Following the presentation, we're going to take a short recess to go see some of the resources and equipment that we do utilize for our safety and security response team.
So, President Reese, members of the board, it's my pleasure to invite up Ms. Jennifer Corey to talk to us about the safety and security within our district. This is just one of the small parts of her job. She does many more things, and this is a small part of her job.
Good evening, Madam President, Governing Board, Cabinet, community. So, I was brought in September of 2015. One of my tasks was to take over with Cortman Rose duties and to continue to build security and safety measures in the district as he did from his predecessors. This is an undertaking that I've always been a part of the team, never actually the team lead, so I could not do this alone in any way, shape, or form. And so I work with the assistant principals, oversee their emergency response plans on the campuses, and so I work with them. And but up here at district, I have to give props to Ben and to Michelle and to Chuck and to Josh, as they are really my team up here to support. I could not do this without them. So just putting that out there. School safety tends to be something that's discussed only after a situation's happened. So thanks for addressing this tonight and having me share with this tonight when it's not in response to something. So you can see the layout of how decisions came out. We start with the year 2015 and 16. When I came on, we worked on the campus. They had their emergency operating plans set. You will not find those published anywhere. They do not get published anywhere for a reason. So, but they all have them. We have copies up here. And so we worked with the campuses to build those following the state template. With that then came the standard drill practices. As many of you here, we do fire drills once a month, lockdowns twice a month, and then they had their bus evacuations also. When I came up here, one of the things that I noticed was very easy access down the hallway. So some of you may not even realize it, but the wall, the beautiful wall that we have was built that year to Dr. Thomason's chagrin, as he likes to be open and accessible to everyone. He felt closed off. However, when you look at that being responsible, that was something that really needed to be done for staff. And whether he likes it or not, it's for his own good. Then attending the trust conferences on a regular basis. They provide us with training and opportunities to network. And one of the things with that was Scottsdale, and I'd worked with James Dorr, who heads up their security. I'd worked with him over the year prior, and they had an emergency response trailer. So I dragged Josh Crosby up there, and we went and looked at their trailer, and we'll go see ours. But of course, ours had to be better, and it is. So, where's Josh? There you are. Give him the mic. So, that year then we set up a drill with the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office. They came to us wanting to test their drill process and procedures with using their dogs. And so we provided them Sossaman Middle School then the following fall is when it actually came about. There was a little transition in administration. The week before the drill isn't the best time to say to John Dolan, hey, guess what? And he doesn't even know where room 202 is. So we delayed that. However, that drill was all laid out. It was in cooperation with the Gilbert Police Department. They covered Power Road for us, and the sheriff's office came in then to go through the campus. We started with a lockdown and moved then to an evacuation through a walking drill, and then got on the buses. And so part of our teaming together was to test our systems. Only about 6, 7 of us knew. We messaged it out. Michelle had everything ready to go, signs, everything that we needed to get out there, so nobody outside, once the drill began, was concerned when you see 10 sheriff's cars in the parking lot. And so we wanted to see how everyone would respond. 900 kids silent, walking down the stairs. It was amazing. After teaching 15 years at the secondary. They did a great job. And Josh, can you talk about your team?
So not only was it a drill for the students and the staff, but we did a test for my office staff and the bus drivers as well. In case you don't know, we have an awesome transportation department and an awesome staff. So on the day of the drill, myself and the supervisor were the only ones that knew about the drill. And when Jen Corey gave the word, our supervisor just went into the break room acting as best he could. You know that there's an emergency, we need all the drivers to go stage by Sossaman. We didn't know if we were going to get 3 or 4 drivers show up in buses or 10 or 12, but we had mechanics. Anyone who had a CDL was jumping in a bus and going. As they were going back to work, some of them, because it happened after morning runs, they were texting other drivers quicker than we could call through our phone tree, and people were showing up. So it was really impressive. Some sheriff's officers were running buses through red lights and stopping traffic so they could get there quicker. Once the drivers got there and loaded students, that's when they found out it was a drill. That's when the students found out it was a drill. The students were kind of bummed that they were going back to school.
As soon as they turned down Jackrabbit, it was like, oh.
But it was a good way to test our system, and it was impressive how they all came together. We've done 2 drills with our transportation department, and we'll do some more, but it came together really well.
It was good to know. They'll be there for you in a pinch.
Ms. Corey, can I just interrupt and ask
Sure.
a question? You said, I don't know if maybe you said it wrong or it's,
Could've.
you said fire drills once a month, I knew that, but you said lockdown drills twice a month? Do you mean?
Twice a year.
Every 2, okay, thank you.
Twice a year.
Okay.
Did I? Sorry.
Yeah, all right,
Twice
so
a year.
that's.
I'm not that obsessed. Well, maybe a little, but okay. That's what you pay me to be. So 2016 and 17 then, we went ahead and worked with this campus's emergency response plans and fine-tuned them to make sure that everybody had what was the state standard and above. And then we also began the emergency response trailer adventure and ended up, go ahead, because this was really your show.
So Scottsdale had basically a 4x6 trailer, and it was packed. The original trailer we looked at was a little bit larger. This one came available at state surplus for about 1/3 of the cost of a new trailer. I told Jen I thought it was way too large, and it's full now. So she was right. She wants to get a roof rack now, but so we started small. We cleaned up the trailer, painted it, had the decals put on, and then for the past 3 years, we've been buying a little bit each year to fill up the trailer. And as we do drills, we make a list of what we think we could use, and we'll add it to the trailer this next year. So, and that's what you guys will be seeing later this evening.
So the drills that year became, the campuses decided to get a little bit more adventuresome because the real situation probably isn't going to happen during the middle of second period. And so let's start testing to get a little bit more authentic. And so Power Ranch ran a before school as kids were coming about 5 to 8. We staged it. We posted the sandwich signs for the parents. We had a place for late drop-offs to go. But Chris really wanted to test his staff and see who would take in any child type thing to make sure we filmed it. Carlos came out and filmed it so we could reflect back to see how things went. We all staged at different areas and things like that to see how it went, and it was really quite wonderful to see everybody's response and pulling in kids and then talk to the staff about how they felt.
How were the parents with that?
They were okay.
Okay.
This is all about communication.
Okay. I was wondering how they would respond to that.
So one thing we've done before any drill that's a little out of the ordinary, we do message the families that, you know, in coming up with our practices and procedures, some drills we do may be a little bit more extensive than others. That message goes out at various times before something happens. So families are aware. For the instance, the drill we did at Sossaman, I don't believe we got one phone call up here at the district office.
Okay, I'm going to knock on something, but we've never
I know,
had
sorry.
a concern. So, which is, yeah. So we try to get it out there so people know. We can't do it during the drill or at the time of the drill, because otherwise you're going to end up with, oh, honey, it's just a drill, you know, kind of thing. So we can't do that, but we try to prep ahead of time. And then at the time of the drill, the messages, the phone message at the school says we are in a drill. They will lock, they will post signs on their front doors that we are in a drill. Those types of things, a lot of times it goes up on the website. That they're like the Sossaman drill. I mean, that was like an hour, so it was quite involved. We also then that year did a campus reunification drill to start working on drills, on bigger drills, and so we took Chaparral and we just did that drill on site, basically. So we moved the kids. So how would you use a campus to reunite families with their children? And so sometimes like our preschool kiddos, you know, they could end up another elementary at another elementary. So how would that look? What would that look like? So we used Chaparral that year, so that was kind of the smallest big drill that we started. And then we worked Kids Club. They have some things with their Department of Health that they work under, so their response plan. We talked about those. It's something that we'll be continuing to discuss with them. Substitute keys. That was something, if you look at some situations in some school shootings, that substitutes didn't have keys for classrooms and they lost kids. There's never been a locked door that's been breached in a school shooting. So it was very important to make sure that all of our subs have a key to be able to lock their doors. And we'll get into some other things that we've done too with that opportunity.
I just had a quick question. Are the subs trained to, when they are trained, or how do we train our subs, I guess? How is there a way that we can, you know, we have this new sub coming in.
Right.
How can we handle that? Or how do we handle that?
Right. When you, we've got, within the sub folder, there is emergency response plans there and what they're going to do. I'm going to be honest with you. When you go and you're a sub in a classroom, you're not going to necessarily read. It's really, there are two types of situations, either leave or hide. And that's the basic of it, of what needs to happen.
I have heard that some other districts around do a sub training. Is that something we offer?
That we don't at this time, but that's something certainly that we can look into.
Thank you, Mrs. Corey.
The emergency communication rubric then is another area that Michelle and I worked on with how we communicate out when we have situations on the campuses. When is it appropriate? When does it affect? And we work on really communicating only when it impacts the educational environment. We have situations every day. So it's really about when should who should know what when type situation. And so we've broken that all out into.
With our new communication tool, which actually came on the year after this, so our rubric's been adjusted a little bit, we do have the ability to send an auto dialer, to send a push, to post something on the internet, all from one site. And you probably saw all of these during last spring's school closures. So this has been a great tool, and what we've done is we've broken it down so the schools are aware of what type of communication is used for different emergencies. But keep in mind, all emergency type communication starts here at the district with Jen and I crafting it.
In all of our messages too, even on the other tools, whether it's the auto dialer, we always make a practice of please see the website for updates, because we don't have the time to update every avenue that we use. And so if you can feed them and funnel them to one spot, then it's one message. Consistency also then is increased without mismessaging, getting different departments doing different communications, different sites. The other thing that came about that year was the terror liaison officer is an officer with the Gilbert Police Department. They have 3 or 4 of them. And what they did that year then is they trained their SROs to go out to all school sites in Gilbert. So this took them probably about 2 years to go through to do lists of what we have and where we improve and what we need to do type thing. So there's a whole super secret board with the FEMA government that you type stuff into and things that only certain people can access. In 2017 and 18 then, all the Knox boxes were looked at. Now the Knox box is something, and we have one right outside the front door here. And you have a couple of them on different properties, a number of them at a high school. But those are boxes that have a key, a general master key, and so the fire department and police, any officer can come in. They have a key. We don't have a key. Those are not our boxes. We can't get into them. The police and fire department do. And so what they do is they go in. So we did a check to make sure the correct business cards, contact, maps were all in there, all healthy, and worked with them to do that, to make sure that they could get in. We also had a new fire inspector. Do you want to talk about Tom?
I can briefly. So I guess transportation director, you wear many hats. One of the things that I help with is the fire inspections at the school, and the town has a new fire inspector, and each of them has their own little quirks. Obviously, elementary schools are always tough for us because they like to decorate the classrooms with paper and put things around the doors. So we've been working with the teachers and staff as well as the fire department on flame retardant fabric, as well as keeping things at least 18 inches away from the door, and getting all that out to our teachers and staff to make sure the rooms are safe. So.
One of the other things,
and just real quick, and
sorry.
Tom is very specific about things hanging from the ceiling.
Yes.
Exactly.
I know.
You better have your footage.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I believe things on the doors.
Yes.
It was a very big
Yeah.
thing about the doors
Yeah.
and how much can be wrapped.
Yeah, this is stuff that they don't really teach you in school as a teacher. But it's about walking by, and if it's on fire, it's bad. So we also then began the repeater project. Josh also oversees the radio communication in the district. And so that involved, there was a repeater at Higley High, and Williamsfield didn't have one. The one at Higley High was actually for transportation. It was on HCPA. Yeah. And so the problem was that Williamsfield, the radios, they couldn't reach their whole property. And at Higley High, they couldn't reach their whole property talking on the radios. So we did the repeaters. They split the cost. We got one new one, and then so they split the cost. So Josh transferred that one over, and then Williamsfield. So now they can use the radios in here on their whole You can listen. I can listen to them now too. Josh and I also, there was a thing that used to exist, and Josh with his history talked about the safety walks. So last year we did safety walks. Ben, Josh, and myself went out to each campus, took note of what needed to be updated, and so that started. It's good, it gets in your steps for the day. All campus phones also, and this is Chuck's department, and there's a picture there of Scott Washburn. He took over the phone in IT's department. And so this is to make all phones capable on a campus to do an all-call, which is something that needs to happen because anybody should be able to call for a lockdown and a security breach. We can change the codes if kids find out and abuse it. But it's okay, too, for a kid to make a call and say that they need to get secure. And so that took a little bit. We also had the outdoor speakers at Bridges. They were not able, while it sounded great when the school was empty, put kids out there on playground and then do an announcement. Yeah, it didn't play out like it did in the book. So those all. And then the district office got an all-call system. And so, share a little story. So what happened is it's a system that Chuck and his folks got through the Cisco, and it allows us to put in on our phones, we punch in a code, and everybody's got a pink sticker on their phone to punch in a code, and it comes across their computers, and it comes across the speaker on the phone, and it comes across a text message if you have your cell phone logged to it to let you know that to go into lockdown or that the district office is in lockdown. It also has a test mechanism, so we can say this is a test, which we do twice a year, 3 times a year. And then Dr. Thomason was really excited when we first put this in, and so he wanted to be nice and go ahead and offer donuts to people for coming in and working on a Saturday. So those of us that weren't here on Saturday were home, and suddenly on our phones we got our messages that there were donuts. And when everybody came in on Monday, we found that there were donuts scrolling across our computer. And he said, can we just get a speaker system? So now we have a code that just is allowed for a speaker and it doesn't come across anyone. But that's been helpful. Also now what we have too is the metal strips. Did it drop? You see a picture of that. This is because teachers can teach with their door locked, in the locked position. And then this goes over the latch. So the latch, it doesn't go in. And so then the door just opens and closes. However, should something happen, and even if a teacher's not there, and you women appreciate that you don't always have your keys in your pocket, right? Guys don't understand that. But you can just pull this away and then the door is automatically locked. So that's something that the schools have been moving towards. So we did that last year. And we'll probably have to purchase like 250 as they disappear.
Just a question in reference to the last slide. What did we mean by the speakers at Bridges? You kind of just talked real briefly.
Well, what they did is they really weren't loud enough for them to hear announcements out on the playground because it's such a big, vast area. So what had happened was that when that was one of the things when we did our safety walk, Jeff Bickle said, we can't hear things out there. So if you need to go into a lockdown or there's a situation, they couldn't hear it because all the kids are out there playing.
Sure.
So we upped the volume and we had that done.
Sure. One question. If you're off that day, what happens if both of you are off the same day and an emergency happens? Who's your backups?
We're in the incident command system, which is through the FEMA training system, and that's what we used. And that's what the police use and fire use and things. There's the incident command. So it's myself, and then Josh is the backup. And then from there, that's what you're supposed to have ideally. So we have 2. Okay. And every position, then everybody in the district from Warren, who's a liaison, and Michelle, who's media, and then her backup's Amy, and then Mike doesn't get a job. Dr. Thomason doesn't get a job.
Just my question to you is, like, every day of the week there's a school day. Is there a calendar so your administration knows who's the emergency person on duty? So all of you know what day of the week you're in charge?
Well, when it's at the site, it's the principal becomes the incident commander or the AP. They are their site incident commander. We would come in as support. If you have to do a district and the school's not able to support itself, that's when we step in.
President Reese, members of the board, through FEMA, all of our administrators are required to take the training, and so all of our administrators have the emergency management response training. So at each school, each administrator has had the exact same. One of the most difficult parts of Jen's job is to making sure that every one of our administrators take all 3 of the classes. So all administrators have had all of the exact same training, so any administrator can step in at any school at any time.
The school
through
secretary
the FEMA training.
has been through the training, as well as the plant foreman, also on the campuses, besides a number of us, right, Mr. Holland? You played nice in the sandbox. Thanks, Dr. Schellenberg. I kept telling him, don't kill the messenger.
So that is one of the most difficult parts about Ms. Corey's job, is making sure that all the administrators stay on top of their training.
Yeah, I'm not the most popular person when I run a fire drill up here, I'll tell you that. Okay? I try to pick the time and day.
Can I just ask a quick question as well on the previous slide? Well, regarding the district office, who manages the access, I guess, if you will? So we have staff who leaves, whose their personal phones are attached to our systems. Who makes sure that gets cleared out?
As soon as we get notified from HR, we being the IT department, their account is disabled and the phone will no longer get their email. If they have a district phone, they're required to turn that in, do a factory reset on it, which wipes everything.
Okay.
We actually don't have a large population of people that use their own personal cell phone, unless teachers turn it on, you know, they want to get their email. But as far as administrators, we give them a district cell phone when they're here, and we get it back when they leave.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you.
So in 2018-19, we're coming up now to this year, we have the emergency communication rubric was updated, and Michelle did training with all the campus staff to go through that. She has a team of 3.
So at each school, they're required to have at least 3 people trained on how to use the different communication tools and to be aware of the rubrics. So we offer training twice annually. And of course, we go out there, if someone new happens to come on board, we'll go out there and do one-on-one training with them. And this is to assure, like you were asking Mr. Ratovich, if someone isn't there, you know, who would be able to do it? Well, they have a backup, and then they have a backup. And then, of course, we're the backup because we can control all of their communications from our phone or our computers.
We also then, Scott worked to finish up all the campuses, able to do an all-call. We also then did the site-based key control access, and I'm going to throw that to Chuck.
I just didn't want to block anybody when I stood up. So the site-based key control access, you see a picture of it in the middle there. That's so the administrators can use, or anybody in the front office can just use their district master key or site key, stick that in, turn it, it locks the doors. And if you need to, you can just turn it back into the light screen and it unlocks the doors.
It gives control back to the campus. Originally, when I started, they were on a technology-based system to lock and unlock. Robert Schroep does a great job about quoting when technology maybe is overused. And so it's much more effective to be able to have the campuses control their front doors at their decision.
For the campuses that are that got reformatted a few years back with the bond money, is this outside of where is it, I guess, located, this key?
In the office.
In the office, which part of the office? You know
It
how those
depends
new
on the
campus-
office
Okay.
itself.
Okay.
As to its design, as to what's the most functional. It might be over here for some.
I was just wondering, is it close to somebody, or are they going to have to get up, walk across the lobby or wherever, and then, you know, that's what my question is.
It's behind the front counters.
Okay, perfect. That's my question. Where is it? So then they can access it quickly. Thank you.
We also then worked with the panic buttons. When I came on board, they had just, Dr. Fowler's team had just installed panic buttons at most of the schools. The preschool and the middle schools didn't have them. It did get cut from when they were building and putting things in. And so we had those installed this year. And so they're happy campers. And then this year we're doing safety reviews of the walks. And then on here you see a picture of Tim from transportation and another picture of a gentleman that's Officer Dana. And so Officer Detective Dana is actually a TLO, a Terror Liaison Officer. He was trained through FEMA. He is Gilbert PD's representative for emergency response when it comes to an actor-shooter situation. So he came out and trained all the APs. One of the things is to make sure that you are trained and that you trained your staff in the same theories and philosophies as the police and the fire, because you don't want to have mixed kind of protocols and then have things, that's when things go bad. So James, Officer Dana, came out and trained, and they're pictured together because I learned 2 months ago in December when he came out that he's actually Tim's son-in-law. And I'm like, seriously? So then the drills again have become more authentic again this year, upping the ante. They are blocking exits. I understand Brian Griggs stood in front of one and went, "I'm fire," kind of thing. So they have to come up with a different path to exit the building. Time of day, they are definitely looking more at passing periods, recess. I don't know that the high schools yet are ready for a lunch one, but they'll get there. Evacuation then to walking off-site and just bringing kids back is a chore. We did that last year with Cooley, and so we're working on more of those this year. We also have staff. They're going in and having staff call drills. So the campus gets familiar with the different voice calling the need for a lockdown and announcing different things. We also then, as you guys, two of you attended, the reunification with live parent pickup. So one of the other things then this year is we always refer to these as flip charts. So you have them in the classroom in the front office. And so these were created back in 2015. It's time for an update. And so that's one of this year's projects. I'm meeting with a core group of assistant principals to go through these. And then we also are running the Stop the Bleed campaign. I don't know if some of you have heard of that. It's going on across the country. Arizona hasn't really bought into it yet tremendously, so the hospitals are really pushing it. And so, Jillian, you have to be a nurse, firefighter, paramedic to do the training. You can only train 8 at a time. So the hospital's coming out and working. We're going to start with transportation. To apply the tunics to actually, it's literally stop the bleed. How do you stuff a wound? How do you do those types of things? That was one of the things at last year's down in Douglas High School that was something that actually was quite beneficial to them and saving lives. So we're going to start slowly. Cortina did one. They happen to have a parent who is a Phoenix police officer and was able to arrange that. So if we can get everybody eventually over the next year or two, it will be something very valuable. Upcoming will be a large event, emergency response hazard plan. I will be meeting with Paradise Valley does have one, and so Mitch Von Echten and I work together at some point in our lives, and so I'm going to go up and chat with him hopefully sometime this spring and start getting that for a large venue on protocols. We're looking at Higley High School fencing. Love to have 2 points of entrance. If you know, right now we have some hallways that go right out to parking lots. And so looking at that, the emergency response templates will be updated from the state. We are also, as you look at the magnets for the doors, one of the things that you see a picture of is for the key or is for the crash bars to be able just to be on the inside and lock it without needing a key or going outside the room, because a lot of crash bar doors to go outside to lock. So we're going to work on that, and hopefully there will be eventually down the road some light notification also for your band, choir, and dance, because again, it's loud. They don't hear that the announcement's coming on. Somebody walks across the hall and says, "Hey," kind of thing. So working on those. So there you go.
I have a couple questions. One is we're having an academy in our backyard. Are we having a conversation with the Gilbert law enforcement in reference to working together about some events? And things like
Oh,
that?
yes. They though, I go to the Chiefs forums. They happen about once a quarter during the year. So he's been talking about that for the last year. And that's something probably about 2 or 3 years down the road. But they have a lecture hall. They're going to have fake fires and training and all that stuff. Yeah.
So, yeah, I hope we're going to be doing some things
absolutely.
together since we're right back here. And the other thing, if you could address for me where we're at in reference to the status for the AED equipment, what type of monitors do we have? AED?
The AEDs right now, we have a policy in draft that should be coming to you at some point. And so with those, know that we need a policy in place first and everything organized before we have one at HCPA, and the high schools for AIA each have one at this point. Maintenance monitoring, you want to have the checks, all of that, who's responsible monthly, pads, all those kind of things all have to be, you want to have that all organized out first.
So are we going to have a conversation where this is going to take place soon?
I hope so.
I hope so too. It's very important. Most of your communities and your schools have AEDs in your schools because that can save a person's life. And I hope we will be implementing that in every one of our schools real soon. And if we could have input and reference that in the near future, please.
Ready for a field trip? Oh.
Yeah, just a couple comments. I know we have to talk about and think about this stuff. It is very uncomfortable. And I think human nature is, lets our imaginations run wild. But I just want to remind everybody that 57 million kids in America go to school every day, and they come home safe. And I'm not making light of that. I mean, on the other hand, we're coming up on the anniversary of Parkland. But I think we all kind of lament this sort of loss of freedom. And I still appreciate the fact that our schools, you know, they can still feel welcoming while being safe. And that has to be a struggle to make them feel that way, that they are secure, but they also, they're warm. And so I thank our schools for that. It's good to be prepared, but just by and large, our schools are safe places. And I wish none of this was necessary. I really, you know, I guess I miss the old days. But I thank you and your team for your efforts. And but like all parents, I hope that we never have to ever use any of this. That's all.
Absolutely.
And Mrs. Kaler and I did visit the reunification drill, and you guys did a wonderful job, and I just want to echo that you guys did a great job. We saw a lot. The kids were well behaved. I was very impressed with the little kids coming in, and they were all in line, and Dr. Thomason toured us and showed us how, and we got to follow a child, and we got to follow a parent through, and it was really remarkable how much work you guys have done, and we notice. So thank you so much.
Thanks. Still small scale, eventually big. Couple years.
Yeah, we appreciate everything you're doing, and like Mr. Glover said, you know, it's unfortunate that, I mean, back in our time, you didn't have lockdowns, you had a fire drill, and once a year you did a bus evacuation, and if you never rode a bus, that was really cool to get on a bus and jump out the back. But unfortunately, the times that we're in require this. I appreciate, because you have to work with multiple municipalities, because we have schools that are in the town of Queen Creek, which use Maricopa County Sheriff's Department, and then we have town of Gilbert. So you have a lot of coordination to do, and I really appreciate that. I would ask, though, at some point, perhaps considering something like a secret shopper. I know when people see you guys walk in, they kind of like, oh, did I leave that door open? Oops, and that door shuts, and things like that. And I know it's like what Mr. Glover said, we want our schools to be welcoming and inviting, but we need them to be safe. And sometimes having that door closed all the time is claustrophobic, and it's you just don't like it, and we tend to prop it, and we get too comfortable with that. So I know that there are times where I've walked into a school, driven by a school, gates wide open, doors wide open. So maybe perhaps soliciting the assistance of maybe a unknown person to the school walking in and being able to give you guys feedback, so that you may have more of a true feeling on what we need to do to keep it safe. And I think our mechanics and everything are in place. The hardest part is changing human behavior. And I know that that is the hardest part, but that is the largest part. We can have all the locks in the world, we can have all the technology in place, and if we don't change our human behavior to utilize that, then what is it for? So I appreciate you guys doing the safety walks, but perhaps having somebody show up on campus randomly that perhaps the campus is not familiar with, to be able to give you feedback might be beneficial.
Informative.
Mrs. Corey, I know from history the last fire a school had was many moons ago, that a child was even involved in a school fire. So are we talking, when we go to these events, fire, are we leaning more towards more lockdowns and less fire drills? Is that a conversation out there right now? Because
there's been conversation probably for about 4 years on it. It's a state, it's the law, there are mandates. What we're doing is we've moved this year into, I've asked them to do 3 lockdowns. Two of them involve going into a shelter in place and then out of a shelter in place. Kind of think of it like DEFCON 3. Basically, you're still educating, the process is still going on, but you don't leave your area, your room, those types that you've got the blinds closed, you're ready to go kind of thing. And so we've worked on that. The state's talked about doing the 12 drills, and then 3 have to be this, 3 this, and then the other are your choice type thing. How fast that will happen in the state is interesting, and I don't know that I'll see it in my time.
I know it's a conversation out
It is.
there. Just
It is. Everybody talks
wondering
about
how
it. Yep.
Arizona's doing and how the
Yep.
how the police feel
It's-
about it
yep.
and the fire
Yep.
chiefs. And
The Gilbert Fire is willing at this point now we're going to work on for next year if the alarm goes off and it's just in one building to only evacuate that building and not evacuate all buildings type thing. They are supportive of that model at this point, and so we're going to be working with that next year to train the campuses with that.
Thank you.
And one last thing that you can clarify for me. It's my understanding that we do with our staff active shooter training. So can you, and I appreciate you saying that they all have emergency plans that parents can ask for that we will not get. It's nothing personal. It's that it's not where we don't have them, we do have them, but we don't share that for that reason. But can you explain real quick on our staff? Unfortunately, another piece is going through the active shooter training.
Yeah. So what happens, and it's always hard off your one point about, you're not going to see these things. We get parents a lot of times that email after we do something and want information or want to know, and it's like, sorry, less is more kind of thing, and not to be rude, but we're not going to share all the details of things. But when they do the active shooter drills and training, so Gateway Point just had, James Dana just came out and did their campus with it. Centennial's done training, and so the principals bring it to the APs, and then they arrange to bring it out to their campuses with the law enforcement agencies to do that. They also, at the beginning of the year, go through with their staff, what are the protocols, what do we do? Every time that there's a lockdown or a fire drill or anything, there is a safety committee that happens afterwards. They have a team of people there, what went well, what didn't go so well, where do we need to improve, and then they feed that back to the campus and to the faculty then at their next faculty meeting without trying to, we don't want to call anybody out, but, I found 3 doors unlocked, or I saw students in 4 classrooms, I could see their feet, heard giggles, those kind of things, and you give that feedback to them, so then they can improve constantly about it. So.
Perfect, thank you. Any other comments or questions? All right, I move that we recess then to go see the trailer.
I second. Sorry.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Sorry. I'm like, oh yeah, we have to. Thank you.
All right, we're going to go ahead and call this meeting to order again. Thank you for that information. The trailer is amazing. Thank you for all the work you guys have put into it. We certainly appreciate it. Any other questions regarding our safety and security update?
Well, Madam President, I don't want to ignore this, but goal 3, communication, I think a couple years ago, that was something that Higley struggled with. I can see the work that is done and how much easier life is when communication is at the forefront of what we're thinking about. So I see great improvement. Thank you.
And it's intentional. So even when we're not perfect, we're thinking about it. We're trying to stay one step ahead of it and learn and move forward. So thank you. All right, we're going to go on to 8.3, our conflict of interest, roles and responsibility for board members. Welcome back, Ms. Good. I'm glad you're here. I hope you're feeling better.
There it is. We had a little conflict of scheduling, but we're all together now. Okay, here's what it said. You may have heard about a school district that had a number of problems that were related to conflict of interest. And that caused the 2018 legislature to make several amendments to statutes to direct about conflict of interest and some of the other situations, such as relationships with auditors, and there were a number of those kind of things. Okay, well, we'll see. Board policy BCA is available in your policy manual, and that's board member ethics. And one of the provisions in there, as you might expect, is to refrain from using the board position for personal gain. That certainly would be a conflict. There are policies coming to the board. Actually, DJ has already been adopted the amendment to that. The 2 conflict of interest policies will be coming. The language in the purchasing policy is actually, part of it is the model for the amendments that were made to the conflict of interest policies. And what they do is they give definitions to some of the terms that have been subject to interpretation for years and causing inconsistent applications. So there's a little bit of clarification in that amendment. We'll look at policy DJ, and that has already come before the board. And the conflict of interest policies will be coming to you at the March 27th meeting. Those provisions prohibit all governing board members and employees from accepting gifts or benefits or promises of those from anyone who either has a contract with the district or who may be taking steps to obtain a contract with the district. And there is a definition of gifts or benefits. It's basically anything of value, including intangible property. It could be real or personal property. Intangible is intangible. It's kind of hard to nail down. An example might be a contractor or a prospective contractor promising to give your teenage son a summer job if they get the contract. Okay, that's an intangible. But it would definitely be a benefit for that board member. Then it goes ahead. The thing has always been it's something of nominal value, and leave that to anybody's guess. But they now specifically say food or beverage, and this expenses or sponsorship related to a special event is a little unclear, but there has been an AG's opinion since this was done, and it had to do with is a superintendent violating this particular statute when they solicit sponsorships for an event. Think of the Teacher of the Year kind of event, that sort of thing. And this would accept those because it's not really a benefit to the individual. It's more of a donation to the entire district. And it says, now it gives a little meaning to nominal value. Greeting cards, mugs, pen, or T-shirts. So those Cardinals, or I think I saw some Suns T-shirts that were made available at least to board members. It's okay. It's all right for you to wear those now. Then the statute says that you shall refrain from participating in any manner, is the language it uses. And that clarifies that if a board member has a conflict of interest, they can't participate in any manner. They can't participate in the discussions leading up to a decision on the matter in which they have a conflict. Many people are under the misimpression that it's only that you can't vote, but you can't participate in any way. And in fact, what do you do when you do have a conflict? And we'll get to that in a minute. When a board member, here's when you have a conflict of interest. When a board member or an employee, the same things apply to them, or his or her relative has a substantial interest in the transaction. Now, I've got a couple terms there. Start with the substantial interest is one where there's some kind of a financial or an ownership interest. So really, money is related to it and makes it a substantial interest. Who's a relative? Well, if you're an employee, such as myself, there could be a conflict of interest. My relatives go 2 generations older and 2 generations younger, and in-laws, sort of, I always say God and everybody, but it's very expansive. You'll be relieved to know that governing board members are only 2 categories of people that can be the relative that causes a conflict of interest. That would be the spouse and a dependent. They define dependent the same way it's done in the Internal Revenue Code as someone for whom you provide more than 50%, or I believe it's at least 50% of his or her expenses. Now, sometimes you don't really have a genuine conflict of interest, but there's something that is kind of related to you, and you're a little uncomfortable dealing with it because you're trying to decide, is it or is it not a conflict? And you're also afraid that what's the image? In other words, an appearance of impropriety. Might it look like you're going to be biased or prejudiced in some way? And in that case, if you feel uncomfortable, then you can recuse yourself from participating in that matter. And it should be, if you're going to recuse yourself, it should be from all participation, not just for the vote. And it's better if you're not in the room, so that just by your very presence, you're not influencing the other board members. What you do when you have a conflict is you declare on the record in the open meeting that you're not going to participate because you have a conflict of interest. You don't have to say what that conflict is. You may, but you're not required to. There is a conflict of interest form. It's on an exhibit that goes along with this policy BCB, and you file that with the secretary of the board, and she would then keep it in a file in the superintendent's office. It is subject to available for public inspection if anyone would ask for it. And you leave the room during the discussion, as I said, and voting. But were there any questions about in the conflict of interest before we go on?
I have a question. So while my conflict of interest is not a legal conflict of interest, it doesn't fall under an defined conflict of interest.
Right.
But I've made it clear I'm not comfortable. I find that it has the appearance of impropriety. So any discussions that have occurred in any votes, I have recused myself.
Yes.
So do I still need to do the conflict of interest form?
No.
Okay, so because it's not a
It's not
defined
technically.
conflict of interest.
It's not technically a conflict of interest. And so if it's just one of those things that you feel like it has the appearance of impropriety and you just are removing yourself because you're a little uncomfortable and you think it might look bad, then you do not have to fill out the conflict of interest form.
Okay.
And if there's ever a question about is there a conflict or not, I've been dealing with conflicts of interest for what seems like 100 years, so I'd be happy to talk with you about that. We're going to switch gears and we're going to go to board roles and responsibilities. This is what I generally call stay in your own lane, and you'll see why, if you don't already know. Policy BA has the operational goals. Those are basically what this board you call your strategic goals, and they are to know what is going on in the district, what the district needs, and developing some strategies for long-term projects, and always in consideration of your limitations, budgetary limitations. So that's just familiar to you as your strategic goals. Another thing related to your roles is to conduct a self-evaluation annually, and this board does that. It hasn't been too very long ago that you did your annual self-evaluation, and that, of course, just allows you to do your job even better than you have before. BBA, you'll notice these are all Bs. The policy manual has everything related to the board in section B. And you adopt the policies to relate to the evaluation and the governance issues. There are some duties and obligations that the board has to become familiar with law and regulations, and of course the district policies. And actually, it's my opinion that if you become familiar with district policies, those are based on state law and regulations, so that it's at least a good starting point. And if you've looked at the policies, you'll see that at the bottom of them, we have legal references. So it tells you some statutes that, those are the statutes that it's based on. So, if you know your policies, you don't have to know them. There won't be a test, but it's a good idea to have, some general idea about it. Oh, I'm going to hop back at that. That work harmoniously with other board members. That sounds, well, that ought to be pretty easy. We're nice to each other. But I've had experience with governing boards that were split, that would have a 3-2 vote or a 4-1 vote, not on individual issues, but on everything that came before the board. Those boards that are like that can't get their job done because they're too busy putting stumbling blocks in the way of the other board members. So if you're for it, I'm against it. And it's a situation that you really can't do much about until those people decide not to be quite so belligerent, and they never do.
Mrs. Good?
Yes.
On the part where it says do a proper share of the work,
Mm-hmm.
I know that we have a new board member, and I don't know if this is the time to maybe put this in there, but we used to have, we talked about having each of us kind of oversee certain schools, and could we have that discussion real quick with our new board member right now? Is that okay with you? Can we do that?
It's okay with me.
Just we used to have it, and then we lost one, and then we gained one, and then we never really did it again, and it just kind of helps everybody to kind of have.
I think one thing I'm going to say that really ties in with this is that it's good to have liaison with a particular school and just kind of be aware of what's going on, but you've got to watch out to not become a supervisor or an inspector. And that's something to be cautious about.
It's more
That's
like
when you're getting out of your own lane.
It's more like the events, like, your area and your events that you try to go to. I think that's kind of how we had it set up before.
Yeah, more of a liaison
It is.
kind of.
It's been more of a liaison so that we've had appropriate board attendance, because I think that's been important to this board for a while, is to have a presence at events. And we've had some who go and some who don't. And I think, though, I hear what you're saying, but I think that we can have Mrs. Reach go ahead and send an email.
And see what.
And see, it tends to kind of
What school
fall
would
in
you
line.
like? What school would you like to
Exactly.
have? And everybody can't have the same one, but it can usually be sorted out. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we can have Mrs. Reach, I know, because we're already mid-February and I can't, it's like usually that's something we've kind of done. So we'll go ahead and have Mrs. Reach send that out, and we'll determine kind of, like you said, the liaison. But just a caveat to that is it doesn't mean other board members can't attend those school events. It doesn't mean that that's the only board member who goes. It doesn't mean any of that. It's just that the other board members can feel like, I don't have to do 50 events, that somebody else should be picking some up, and it just falls on that responsibility.
And it puts a face to the board that schools are familiar with. So it's a good idea. Like I say, I will caution you not to try to run the school. You're going to act impartially. That really gets into the conflict of interest kind of thing. And then throw in there that you do have the responsibility to maintain that confidentiality of executive sessions. And I think you're all very good at that, or at least I think you are. And you're going to represent the board to the public in the best way possible. I've put in red something that really gets into the stay in your own lane kind of thing, and it appears in several different policies to refer complaints to the school administration. You don't need to guess who to refer it to. You refer it to the superintendent, and he's going to put it into the organization wherever it belongs. Many of the times when someone comes to you, they haven't talked to anyone else. They've just gone right to the top. And when that comes to the superintendent, what he's going to do, he's going to say, have you talked to the administration of the school? And if not, send them back there. And if it's a situation that it's now appropriate for the superintendent to handle, he will. All of the power of the board is in a meeting, which is called under the open meeting law, properly noticed, and you only have power as a board when that is, when you are in a meeting. Now, individual board members have authority in two situations, and only one is very common, and that's when you are in a governing board meeting. The other time doesn't happen very often, but in the event that the board as a whole, in an open meeting, delegates to one or two board members, never three because that's a quorum, to get some information or to perform some particular task, and maybe get it, like I said, get information to bring back to the board so that that topic can be dealt with. Maybe you're talking about it, questions arise, so you ask one of the board members to find out X, Y, and Z and bring it back to the next meeting. In that kind of a case where it's been decided by the board and voted, not just people nodding their heads, but an actual vote to delegate this task to the board member, then the board member does have the authority to the extent that it's been delegated to them. That
President
really
Reese?
does not happen often.
I was just going to say that's similar to the delegates where we determine who our ASBA delegates are, and
Yes.
we give them authority to vote on behalf of our district.
Yes, that is a good example. And I don't need to say any more words. We've had enough.
Well, Ms. Good, there was a pause. So just back to the previous slide about referring complaints to the proper authorities, I just want to echo what you're saying. It seems, you know, when you're a new board member and somebody comes to you, it's very unsatisfying to say to somebody, you have to talk to the superintendent. But my experience with Dr. Thomason has been, when I've passed things along to him, I only hear good results back. And so I'm just echoing what you're saying. It works. The system works when you work the system.
And actually, you've been prescient about some upcoming comments that I'm going to make. But no, it is very true. Very often, if you give Dr. Thomas, I'll butter him up a little bit, he's my boss. When you give him contact information for the person who needs help, he often will get hold of that person before they've even turned around then and contacted the office. That's the way you can keep things from boiling over. Board superintendent relationship, you certainly know that the board establishes the policies. The superintendent is your CEO and is responsible for implementing the policies that you have passed and to provide some professional leadership to the board. You can't do everything, and therefore delegates much authority. And you're aware, principals have a great deal of authority on their own sites. There are a lot of, we had Josh Crosby here. He's got a lot of authority over his division. So I know some small rural districts where the superintendent is also the principal. Something else I was thinking of, even a bus driver. So, that couldn't happen here in Higley, but it sometimes does.
Dr. Thomason, do you want to drive a bus? Is that what I just heard?
President Reese, members of the board, Josh did allow me to drive a bus during the job fair the last week, and I didn't take him up on that, but I'm thinking about it.
Okay, we're going to we've touched upon it, but we're going to move on to handling complaints. This is one of, if not the hardest things that you have to do as a board member. You wonder, how can I help? So what do you have to do when you get complaints? And you're going to get them just because you're a board member. And you'll get them in all kinds of places. You'll get them at football games, you'll get them at schools, you'll get them at Fry's, you'll get them at church, and you might get them by email and social media. So you're out there, you're being...
And anonymously.
And anonymously. And those are the most difficult to deal with because you turn it over to the superintendent and he doesn't know what to do about it. You just kind of have to wait till that one boils over. And it's not a good way of handling it. So you've got those. You might have issues brought to the board as a whole, such as at the call to the public, or just made directly to you as an individual. And maybe you're the only board member that is approached, but in this day and age with email and stuff, I'm sure that there are many complaints that come to all board members. We refer it to the superintendent, and as I put in red or highlighted some of the previous parts right out of the policy, they require referral. So why can't I investigate myself? I am a board member, so I can use this first-person language. You want to avoid having this prejudice And prejudice just means prejudging. And you want to avoid that. And that gets you to this appearance of impropriety, where if you have gotten so involved in a matter and done an investigation, and you want to see whether this complaint that came to you is true or not, if it comes to the board for decision, you don't have the appearance of being impartial about the things. And maybe you don't realize it, but there are several areas where it is possible in policy for matters to come to the board if they aren't dealt with satisfactorily by the administration. And we've got them put out here: the student discipline, employee discipline, complaints from the public, employee grievances. There is a grievance procedure for that, but if it's not resolved, that can come to the board. And then any charges of unlawful discrimination or sexual harassment. These are areas that are in our policies, and all of them provide for a review by the board. So our policies, every board meeting, well, where there's anyone that from the public that wants to address the board, President Reese reads off that little blurb that's on our agendas, and it refers to policy KEB, which is the policy for concerns or complaints about personnel. So there are 3 particular ones, and then just KE is just a general thing. It requires the person to put in writing what their complaint is, who knows about it, is there anybody else that they should talk to, just general information that will allow an investigation to take place. And there again, we go a little farther in this policy, BBA, where it talks about referring complaints, but then it goes a little bit farther to say to refrain from individual counsel, and that would be advice to the complainant, or action that you're going to take from it. I'm going to digress just a little bit to the insurance issue. The Arizona School Risk Retention Trust, as you know, is our insurer. We have a coverage agreement, and in that, it defines a covered party. And governing board members would fall under this of any person or organization undertaking an action for the district. But it goes on, while acting solely on behalf of the district, in either event, while also acting within authorization granted. Now that would mean when you're in a meeting, or if you have been delegated to, is it Mr. Glover who's the legislative liaison? So he's insured while he's doing that. He's covered by the our insurance. Board members that, as I said, who are convened in a meeting have the liability coverage from the trust. Individual board members acting alone have no greater or different rights than any other citizen, which is why I said don't try to run the school, because it's no different than your role as a parent or a citizen. And I underlined, because this is something that a lot of people don't realize, is that board members who are acting outside of a meeting, unless they're that person with that special delegation, you have personal liability for acts and omissions that take place other places, that you're not acting within your authority. So we don't want you to have that. I'm going to bounce back. That was important because it has to do with staying within your authority. And here's some practical reasons not to do your investigation. kind of boils down to, as a board member, you're less likely to be able to find out what the situation is. The people who have boots on the ground, as they say, are the ones who can talk to the appropriate people. They know the situation and are much better prepared to evaluate the complaints that you've received. But if you don't do something, you feel like people will think you don't care, that the only way you can show that you care. And I think what you can do, what I suggest always, is you explain to people, I'd love to help you with this problem. I can't go into it myself. Our district policies prevent that. They tell us that we're to refer people to the superintendent. And tell them why. Well, the matter could come, there could be an appeal of this to the governing board, and I need to be impartial if that should happen. But here's what you can do. You can go take this information to the superintendent's office. And as I said before, it may or may not be who's going to handle it initially. And you might tell the person, if the superintendent isn't the right person to handle this, he'll see that it's sent to the appropriate party. In fact, I'll call the board secretary and let them know that you're going to be calling so that they can expect you. Could I have your phone number so that I can do that? And then do it. You've paved the way. You've helped them without getting involved in the nitty-gritty of what their problem is. You're probably going to have heard it before you get a chance to get a word in edgewise and tell them this, but that's okay if you've heard what the problem is, and help them by referring them to the people that can help them is basically my take on that. Only a couple more slides, guys. There would have been more had I been here at the work-study session. So transparency, which is really important. That school district that got into so much trouble, I mean, part of that was just nobody knew what was going on, and there was no transparency. As you're very well aware, the open meeting law is geared toward letting people know what's going on. And the agendas are established so that people can look at them and see what you're going to be dealing with. You know what? Excuse me, I'm going to digress totally. The slideshow that you are looking at is not what I'm doing. You're following it. You're doing it fine. But yeah, I mean, all of a sudden I realized, what's happening? And then I remembered, you have what I would have used had I been here at the work-study session. And I've trimmed it down. So, okay. There's an explanation for this. You're doing well. You can look at what's on the screen. Okay, back on track. The whole thing of the open meeting law is to let people know what you're doing. And if you set up your agenda in a way that people know what you're going to be doing, they know whether they should attend the meeting or watch the video. You know, there are ways that they can know how. And then minutes get put on the website so that people are informed. I think it was the last meeting, or maybe the meeting before, that you had a policy that dealt with electronic communications among board members and how you have to be careful with those. Well, you can see why, because nobody knows what you're talking about, and so that is not transparent. There are some new requirements in the statute for postings that are on the website. They're not burdensome. you have to have the average teacher's salary for the current year and the previous year. And you have to indicate the increase in average teacher's salary, which I think is rather funny, but it's for people who can't subtract. So you got to tell them the dollar amount and the percentage of the increase. Then there's also another issue. The Auditor General's report on spending is to be put on the website. The district was already doing that before the statute came along, so we're in good shape.
Mrs. Good?
Yes.
Is that requirement for all schools and charters?
Oh, yes, it is. And you had asked me that question, and I didn't remember. Yes, charter schools have the very same obligation. In fact, the wording of the statute, in the statutes, the wordings that applies to school districts and charter schools is the same.
Yeah, Ms. Good, that was me that asked the question. There was fierce debate during when the legislature was meeting about that and about being private contractors and all that. But I just want to take a moment because I did look up our percentages, which is posted, but AZ Central has all of the schools. And just for my fellow board members, Higley went up 13% last year, even though we did not specifically get money to cover the ASRS 12-point-something% contributions. And that is a concerted effort by Dr. Thomason, Dr. Fowler, Dr. Schillenberg, fiscal responsibility, focusing on systems to be able to do that. And in addition, we also gave our classified folks as much as we possibly could. So for our size, I couldn't find another school district that gave raises that much. And that started where we did and ended up where we did. So we should be proud of that. So you can look and compare like sizes and all that. We are top notch.
Yeah, you can, and this does make it really easy. I mean, you know, you can flip through different districts and just, you can see what they've done. There's no question about it. Well, my last little closing is just, you should be a forester. Think of somebody up in that tower that has kind of a bird's eye view of what's going on in the forest as a whole. And let the administration be the arborist. An arborist looks at individual trees and takes care of those individual issues. And that's just a way I think that the roles of the board and the administration, how they differ, but how they complement one another. Is there any questions?
Thank you for putting this together. I know we have a new board member, and you know, it's always a good reminder. It is important for us to refer concerns, complaints to Dr. Thomason, and what we were just talking about with Mrs. Kaler. This board is very good about being out in the public and supporting our schools and being visible. On the other side of that, with this board being out at our schools, very involved with our community, because we are a small community, then we are readily accessible. And I know Mrs. Wilson will, if hasn't, will. You know, you're gonna get concerns, you're gonna get complaints, and what Ms. Good said is most of the time, because we are accessible, we are right there. We are the first ones that they're talking to and that they're telling. So it hasn't gone to their administration, or if it's a parent, it hasn't even gone to the teacher, anything like that. So, and sometimes it's not meant to, it's just they want to vent and we're there. But it is important that we remember our role and we don't get too involved. And I can tell you, as a new board member and, you know, for a couple of years, that information I was hearing, I was like, oh my gosh, how this is so wrong, this can't be going on, you know, and then passing it on, and there's always three sides to a story. We get one side. There's their side, your side, and the truth somewhere in the middle. It's not that anyone's like purposely lying, it's just their perception of the situation. And so sometimes it's the perception is skewed, and so I was taken back on some of the information I was hearing, and obviously as a board member, it's not what we want to hear. But I have learned not to react and to forward that information, and I have learned that when I'm not going to deny it, there are situations that go on, and Dr. Thomason is on top of it and handles it, and but being able, I can't fix it. That's not my job. It's not my role. So I think that that's really important, and I appreciate you stressing that. And it's hard on this side because I think everyone, when I look everyone up here, knowing their personalities, we're here for a reason, and I think it's because we're fixers. We want to be fixers, and it's not that we want to do the job. We want it done right. We want what's right, and so I think it's in our nature to try and help people, is not fix the situation, but we want to help people. So, and I think that's part of the reason we're all up here. So learning how to pass that off is difficult, but like Mr. Glover said, any situation I've taken to Dr. Thomason, he has reached out, he has immediately jumped on it. I don't necessarily get the feedback regarding the situation, but Dr. Thomason has always either called me or texted me and said, hey, I've reached out to them, whether he's talked to them or left a message, so he lets me know it's not just sitting there.
If I may tell you one tiny little anecdote related to what you said about how many sides of a story, and I had said, you usually only get one side, you get the complainant side. And we had an issue not long ago of someone who was making several very negative emails, and among the recipients were 2 board members. Negative, negative, negative. That person sent a very positive and a grateful email, did not send it to the board members.
Wait, Linda, where are you going? Are you done?
Are you going to share with us what that?
Well, I just want to say thank you. I'm thankful that you're back with us and feeling so good. As I was going through this tonight, thank you for letting us know that last comment. But also, I think sometimes too, and Jill and Christina and I are probably more subject to this, but we have kids in the district, and our kids hear things, and it's hard sometimes, to be very honest, when your kid comes home and says something to you and how you process through that. I always tell my kids, I kind of tell them, I said, you're like a pastor's kid, to be very honest. And people are watching you and looking at you, and that's hard sometimes for our kids to wear. And so I'm saying this to the public, that my kids are kids. They're just kids. They're no more special. They're no more less special. They're kids. And so we have to always keep them in mind too, I think. And our teachers, for the most part, I do believe, treat our kids just as kids. But there's definitely, some weight on their shoulders. And Jill, your kids might see that coming up as well. So, anyways, I can't wear my kids' behavior all the time. If they mess up, they mess up. But I do think about that too. So thanks for letting me share.
And our kids did not ask to be in these positions that we went out for elections for. And that's an important piece. And my 10-year-old definitely did not ask for it. So to remember that they are just kids.
And may I add your spouses also?
Oh, yes.
No, but I appreciate the information, and If I'm not mistaken, we're going to have some of these a couple times where it's just kind of a review on what we do. And because I think it is, even though I'm in my 6th year, every day's different. Policies change, statutes change, laws change, and I still have 3 binders that are this big that have paper policies in them, and if you would like the binders, I'll be happy to bring them to you. But yes, so the policies change, but what I'm saying is we have policies, like I said, I have binders and binders, the huge ones, and we can't know everything either. And so I think that with Ms. Good reminding us of our responsibilities, sometimes it's good to kind of bring us back to the basics and remember what we do, why we do it, and how we do it, or how we're supposed to do it. So, because sometimes we do get out of our lanes, and so Ms. Good's right there to put us back in, but I appreciate the time and the reminders. So I thank you for that, and thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you, Mrs. Good.
All right, we're going to go on. Our last item is our future agenda items. There's a couple information items coming up. We do have our IT curriculum update at our next work study. That will talk about technology curriculum and how technology is used within our curriculum and what we teach. That we do have our field trip information item where Mr. Glover had asked for the evaluation process, so we're going to have that. So this was the teacher evaluation process. So we do have a couple of those coming up. I do know that there was some conversation about the how Mr. Glover had talked about how much standardized testing we do. So we will get to that. Anything else? No. All right, with that, I move that we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0. Have a good evening.
Happy Valentine's.